Our final inductee arrived before us as a teenager, and he is still a constant presence 40 years on.
The first time I laid eyes on Garry Lyon was at Football Park in 1986. Melbourne had started to try and recruit me from the Sturt Footy Club. I'd heard a lot about this up-and-coming star from Kyabram. Very skinny at that time, very hairy legs, I remembered that. But I also remember him kicking 2 or 3 goals. Garry stood out, and I got introduced to him after the game. That was the start of a long friendship.
Up in front, White, off hands, Lyon. That is a magnificent goal. What a goal!
He had this air of confidence about him. He wasn't arrogant at all. You sort of knew really early that he had a fierce competitiveness about him.
Too far out of the score for Lyon, you would think. A mammoth kick though by the Demon Star. Oh, don't tell me he's kicked it! What a goal!
How I'd describe Garry as a player, probably the package. He had everything. Highly skilled. He could do a lot of things with the footy that most guys couldn't. Kick both sides of his body, used his body extremely well in marking contests because he wasn't overly big early days, but his footy IQ was something that always stood out. And he stood up in big moments.
Lyon with a hand on it, recovers well, the veteran goes a goal, and he has kicked it!
He commanded your attention. He just knew where to lead at the right time, and you got the foot in the midfield and you could look up, and he was leading right at you, so it was pretty hard to miss.
Tries to lay it to Garry Lyon. Good shot by Lyon. What a goal! He's a champ.
One of the great games for me was against the Western Bulldogs, 94 semi-final. Gazza kicked 10, and he just, right from the first quarter, just stood out that he was going to impact that game, and he was really well looked after by a lot of the midfielders that I think I might have actually helped him with 3. You knew he was going to stand up because of his class, that he could win games off his own boot, set us up, big win, extraordinary game.
Here's number 10 if he's accurate. And he is!
He's a little bit of a unicorn, really. I mean, he's a 5-time All-Australian. I think in 45 years, he's the only one to do 2 All-Australians as a defender and then 2 as a forward, so he was a rare talent that he could do both. Garry, as a captain, led the club from 91 to 97. At that time, was the longest-serving captain. He had a great ability to have that real leadership and hard-ass football persona, and people wanted to follow him, and that's why he was a great leader. We used to spend a lot of time chewing the fat around and having a latte, and he always used to order his latte hot, hot, hot. I don't want a milkshake. So we used to have a lot of coffees talking about the club, how we were going to get the group better. We learned a lot off each other. We were great mates.
Over the back, Garry Lyon off the ground. Brilliant! What a goal! A classic!
At the end of Garry's career, he could have gone really anywhere he wanted to. He's a highly respected journalist, and his understanding of the game is still at the forefront. Look, he's had an amazing contribution to the game through his work in the media.
Taken by Lyon. A screw punt. That is magnificent footy by a champion.
I think it's great recognition for him and our club at the time. Really strong club. Unfortunately, never saluted with a premiership. I think when eventually winning the premiership and seeing him present the cup was really special. I'm sure if you asked him, that was one of the highlights of his life.
Lyon again.
How would Garry be remembered? I think from his teammates' point of view, highly respected, star of the competition. So all the accolades, really proud that he's got that recognition. No doubt there's some unbelievable names of our great game in this little club, the Hall of Fame, and he will sit very comfortably amongst all those legends of the game.
Welcome to the Australian Football Hall of Fame, Garry Lyon.
In towards half forward, gathered by Lyon. He's proving to be dangerous.
Off hands, Lyon. Pulls it back. That is a magnificent goal. What a goal!
Ball stills for Garry Lyon. Spins out of trouble and kicks the first goal of the game. Oh, what a kick. What a magnificent kick by Lyon. It's his 7th goal.
Danger for Richmond here. Lyon, oh, one-hander. A ripper. Well played, Garry Lyon.
Forgotten everything I was going to say, Jerry. So I'm going to get a copy of that tape and send it to my 3 sons down there, whose memory of my career has been carried off on a stretcher. So I did play.
It's 26 years since they went on that lap with you.
26,
What did it mean to you when the chairman gave you a call to tell you?
Well, never. I hadn't anticipated this, and I'm not being falsely modest. It was 26 years since I last played footy. So when I got to know Richard a little when, you know, the 2021 grand final and premiership over in Perth, and when he said it was Richard, I thought, are we off here? I thought, geez, what have I done, or what have Melbourne done? And we had a bit of small talk, and then he said, one of the great joys of my job is to induct people into the Hall of Fame, and you're going in. And I was speechless for one of the few times in my life. It was extraordinary.
So Dad played for Hawthorn, but you knew him more for what he did at Kyabram.
Yeah, I talk about my dad a lot. I probably cry. He's my hero. He was a footy coach, and a great footy coach. Played with Hawthorn for a couple of years and then went off coaching, and I just dagged around behind him wherever he went as a young kid, and he eventually coached the premiership at Kyabram in 1975, which was every bit as exciting as Melbourne's premiership in 2021 for us. So, no, he was a constant and remains a constant in my life.
Just out of interest, how many games would he have needed to play for you to be at Hawthorn?
Well, he played 16, had 2 years, and it was up and down a bit. So Hawthorn were in contact with Dad quite a bit about, I was zoned to Melbourne at the time, so they're saying, look, don't sign him, we're going to try and get this father and son stuff down. But they didn't get there, and I took off to the Demons and had a wonderful, wonderful time at Melbourne.
If they had got the rules
4
changed,
premierships,
right.
Jared, Hawthorn.
Could you have seen yourself in their setup?
I haven't thought about it, but there was 4. I've looked at it occasionally, Dipper. I thought, shit, there's Dermot at centre forward, he gets the hardest defender, and there's Bung at full forward, he gets the next, and Bucky, he gets the third. I thought I could slide in there in the forward pocket and just cruise around, but I haven't thought about it much. I didn't.
This is a Melbourne story, and they knew what they had coming through, didn't they?
I assume they did. Could play footy and was playing good junior footy, and Kyabram was slap bang in the heart of Melbourne's recruiting zone. So Kelly O'Donnell is in the room. So he went before me as a Kyabram boy down to play with Melbourne, and he was as big a star that came out of Kyabram. So I followed his career so closely, and all I ever wanted to do was get to Melbourne and play.
So it's a very traditional build-up, isn't it? Teal Cup, under-19s, and then it leads us to 1986 round 1. What do you recall of your first game for the D's?
1986 round, I can't remember retiring, Jared. 1999 was round 1 Richmond, MCG, Easter Saturday, and Good Friday came round. I was 18, and I hurt my back, surprisingly, doing something, and I spent most of Friday, Good Friday, trying to get a hold of the Melbourne doctor to tell him I couldn't play, but there was no mobile phones and I couldn't find him, so I just sucked it up and ran out and played on the Saturday. It was a 32-degree day against Richmond. I started in the half-back flank. That was my first position. I played on Michael Pickering, who many in the room would know, was a fanatical runner who would just run, and at half-time I thought, that's the end of my career. I was cooked. And thankfully he didn't come out after half-time, so I survived.
And it takes a little twist late, doesn't it? You kicked the last 2 goals.
Yes, I told you that happened, Jared. So I went late and kicked the last 2 and we got up over the Tigers, yeah.
Who did you play on in the next set of weeks?
Yep, I played on Trevor Barker the next week as a half-back flanker. The great St Kilda half-back flanker. Was just pinching myself, probably wanted his autograph more than play on him. And that was the end of my career as a half-back flanker. And round 3 I played centre forward against Paul Roos. And then for the rest of that career I was just this skinny centre forward playing against... I went back and had a look. Roosie, Bruce Dool, I played on as an 18-year-old. I came out against Collingwood, and this Aaron's in the room, and congratulations. And I ran up against the biggest human I'd ever seen. His name was Greg Phillips. I was this skinny kid from Kyabram. I thought he's going to eat me. I stood behind one of his legs and you couldn't see me. So that was our lot in '86. We were battling a bit, but I was coming up against these big monsters.
That theme of forward and back defines your career. Is your distinction here is that you are the only player in the 45 years of the All-Australian to win multiples as a forward and as a defender. What was the push and pull like as to where to be?
So I started as a forward, and then about 89, John Northey, I played centre-half back, and then I played some state footy at centre-half back and loved it, and had a really good thing going there for a while with Jimmy Steins, who was this hard-running mobile ruckman, but every now and then he'd come back to centre-half back and he would take my man and I'd just run off and roam, and it was the greatest thing I'd ever done for about 4 weeks. I was getting that many kicks, and the dumb ruckman didn't know where I was because Jimmy was playing on my man. And I thought, shit, this is a Brownlow coming up here. But then Jimmy realised that his Brownlow was going down the drain as well. So he gave out the arse. He said, back you go, son. So I went back and played there for the next couple of years.
You played in good teams, and 1988 is probably unfairly remembered for how it ended, but there's this fabled run. What were the last weeks of 1988 like?
So we had to win the last game of the year to get in, 1988. So it was against the great Sticks, Kernaghan's, there he is, the champ. Carlton team are coming off a premiership, and we beat them in the last game to get in. Then we beat the Eagles in the first final. I kicked the goal late to put us in front. Then Murray Renstead had 15 seconds to ruin that, but he missed. So we went through. We beat Collingwood at the MCG. We were an underdog. We were a real big underdog team. And then we went back out to play Sticks' boys at Waverley in the prelim, and we would have been $25 if betting was around then. They would have been $1.01, and we beat them. And we had a little bit of luck. We kicked with a win 3 quarters in a row. And I walked off that ground going, shit, I'm going to a grand final. I'd never been to one in my life. And unfortunately, this All-Australian Hawthorn team was sitting there well rested, had a week off, and they absolutely smashed us. So that was the end of that. But we got there.
How central is David Rhys-Jones in that series?
So David Rhys-Jones split me open from here in that last game at the MCG. So I was having a few blues with him, and anyway, I got to the prelim, and I went up as we used to do back in the day. You go in the grandstand and just sit and watch the reserves play, and it was a cold, wet day, I remember, and I was sitting there, and the Carlton boys were over there doing the same thing, and I looked over, and there's Rhys having a dart. Just sitting up the back having a cigarette, and I thought, right, you bastard. If I get to play on you, I'm going to run you from one end of Waverley to the other. And I did. I played on Sauce for a little while, and then I played on Rhys, and he was coughing up black lung tar halfway through the third quarter, and I had a pretty good game that day. It was good.
How big a part of your career is state footy?
Well, I'm on record. I think people know my attitude to that. I love state footy. It's a bit like being in this room tonight, to be honest. It is this humbling to sit around, and every face I see, it brings back a memory through my footy days. And when you played state footy, you just walked in. I walked in the room and just sat and watched, and was just taken to a whole other place, because all the greats that we played against week after week, and you're only natural, you'd sit there and go, shit, I wish I could play with him, and I wish I could play with him. And then state footy came around, and you did, and I loved every single minute of it. I wish it had come back, and I think the modern day player's missing out on that opportunity to sit down and go, I was a Victorian player, a South Australian player, Western Australian, whatever the case may be, and I loved every single second of it, Jared.
1989 is the big one.
Yeah, so I was going to die state footy. They said, we'll go back. This is the MCG?
Yep.
Yeah. We'll give it one more go, and we played at the MCG. We had that great Victorian full forward, Jason Dunstall, playing at the time. And we had Dermot was there. We had the best team ever, and we went into Jollymont had their offices, and we went in and thought, shit, I don't know if state footy's going to survive here. And we walked out of their team meeting, and there was like just as like a grand final crowd. 91,000 people went into the ground, and it was one of the great state games, and we smacked South Australia, Cornsey, so it was even better. And yes, we did. You were coaching, and we beat you, and state footy was on again.
You captained Victoria in 94,
yeah.
But curiously not in 95.
No. What
happened?
Well, I was going to captain them for the second time, and then we had a very big game at the MCG, and Kevin Shifter-Sheehan, who's my boss at work, a great bloke, Shifter, he came up and he said, listen, got a big game here at MCG, South Australia, playing again. He said, and Gazza Rablets, we're not quite sure we can get him over the line. So if we dangle the captaincy, we reckon we'll get him. And he just looked at me. I said, go and get him, kid. So again, we got Gary Ablett, and I was happily a vice captain.
And this was EJ's day, which is very much front of mind after what we saw with Newell yesterday.
1995 Danny Frawley Day. So one of the great days of footy.
What happened in the rooms that day around EJ?
Spud, the late great mate, EJ's eyesight was failing, and he just sat in the rooms, and then Spud would sit next to him, and Plugger would Spud would say, here comes Plugger, and he'd get up EJ, and he'd go, get a stick it up him, and it'd drag all his energy out, and he'd sit back down again, and then each player made their way to him, and Spud would tell him who was coming, and EJ would get up for it, and then he heard out and famously did that lap, which will stay with us forever and a day, as would Neil Danaher's yesterday. So there was some great synergies in all of that.
Leadership, those years at Melbourne. How seriously did you take the captaincy of the D's?
No, I loved Melbourne. I loved it, and I was made a captain early, probably too early than I should have. And I took great pride in what we were as a footy club, and we never got where we wanted to go. But Caroline Wilson once called me the first playing president. I probably stuck my nose into too much stuff as a player. I don't know if that was a compliment or not from Caroline. Could never tell. But I did love it. I loved every part of it, and I treasured it. And to have the man that I handed the captaincy over for a couple of years speak means the world to me, Toddy, who's over in Perth tonight. So, I loved it. I loved everything about it.
And your three coaches.
Yep.
Just give us a quick pen pick of your three coaches.
John Northey, the first coach, took us on when we were a pretty poor side in 86, and then we played in a prelim in 87 and a grand final in 88, and he just squeezed us dry. We were nowhere near probably in the best 7 teams or 8 teams in the comp, but he got the best out of us, Jared. He was an us against them champion. He could turn any piece of media into a story that umpires wanted to get you, or the media are after you. So I love playing with Swooper, and I had a really great relationship with him. Neil Baum came in, who remains one of my favourite people in footy, one of the great pragmatists. Just said, do this, do that, and we'll win. And he didn't, because John used to yell a fair bit at us, and Swooper didn't. And then I was Barmy didn't. And then I was very lucky to have Neil Danaher in the last, I had him for a year and a half. He came in and coached in 1998, which was my last full year, and I retired halfway through 99. And I kind of wish I had had him for a bit longer because, geez, he's a good coach.
As soon as your playing days were done, there was another choice to make, media or coaching. How immediate was that?
I had a coaching opportunity pretty much straight away if I wanted to explore it, and I went and had a look at it, and I was only 31 at the time, and I wasn't ready to coach, and I'd been doing a lot of media in the last 3 or 4 years, so I didn't, and it sort of set me on a path where, over the next however many years, probably 3 or 4 chances came along if I wanted to go and coach, and each time I sort of said no, and I got. I had Craig Kelly, who's my manager and great friend, who'd argue the case with me sometimes, and I'd sort of say, well, I kind of like doing what I'm doing. I like working in the media, and I'm still doing it today, and those days are long gone. But I loved we did the international rules. I loved that. That was great fun, but it was in and out.
Do you feel like you've chosen wisely?
I hope so, Jared. Yeah, I don't have any regrets. I love my time in the media. I look around this room, and there's David Barham started me in media when I was still playing at Optus Vision way back in the day. Sat me in the back of in a grandstand with Dennis Pagan to do special comments. That was well ahead of your time, Dave. While I was still playing, but then I'd see Bung and Derm and Brownie and Hutchie's in here in the room, and Shane Crawford and Jim and Sam. All those blokes are great friends and allies of mine, and I've had a charmed run in the media, no question.
You've given an awful lot to footy, Gaz. The joy here is you're on your own station, so frankly, go for as long as you like.
Settle in. No, I know it's been a long night, so I won't try to keep you. So I want to congratulate the other inductees, first of all. Nick Revolt and Luke Hodge, if I was picking a team to play for my life, they'd be amongst the first 2 I'd pick. No question about that. So to be inducted on the same night is unbelievable, and I'll tell you what, I'd be very happy to play with Daisy Pearce and Aaron Phillips as well. So And I'd be happy to go on a footy trip, Peter Daly, you know, and that... There we are, Pete, but I like the sound of you, Pete. All I ever wanted to do was be a footy player. That's it. That's really simple. That's all I wanted in life, was to be a footy player. Pretty simple, uncomplicated. From the moment I could walk, a footy player, that was it for me, and nothing else changed. You know, the older I got, you know, through into my teens, I just wanted to be a footy player. So if you can just indulge me for a few moments, I want to thank some people who helped me along the way to get there. I think this is 26 years on, by the way, and as I said, I didn't expect it in any way, shape or form. So had this happened not long after I retired, I suspect that this speech would be a little bit different, and I'd probably be a little bit caught up and wrapped up in myself still, having just retired as a player. But with 25 or 26 years, you get perspective, and the fundamental truth of it right now is my mind went straight to the people who are on my table tonight, and they're the most important people in my life. And whilst I'm enjoying the night unbelievably so, you couldn't imagine, I'm just so happy for them. So the Melbourne Footy Club, as I spoke to Gerard, I love. I've got two of my great mates from those days, Rod Grinter and Brett Lovett here. It's great to have them on the table. There was a time there for well over a decade where we spent probably every day of our lives together, and that was off-season and on-season, marriages, babies and all that sort of stuff, and to see those two here tonight means the world. Paul Hopgood and David Neitz as well. So I thank those boys enormously. Balls is a psychopathic killer as a player on that half-back flank. Sometimes there was Brett Lovett there at half-back, me at centre half-back and Rod on the other half-back flank, and we would amuse ourselves by telling whoever Rod was on how he was going to kill him and rip his head off him. And one day Carl Langdon said, listen, you've got to stop because Brett Heady's going to have a nervous breakdown. So I love having those boys here. My sisters, Joanne and Tracy, and their husbands, Rod and Damien, and my brother Rick and Mara, his wife. So my family mean the world to me. There's a standard joke in our family that I'm the golden child amongst our family, and that is true. So if I ring Mum and she sees my number come up and she's on the phone to Joanne or Tracy, she quickly hangs up and puts me straight through. To my siblings, the three of you, I know it gets tiresome having someone who's a player, an AFL player at the time, and you get relegated somewhat, but you say to me all the time how proud you are of me. Well, I want to tell you tonight how proud I am of you three. My brother means the world to me as well. To say my parents and my dad got excited about the time I started playing AFL footy is a bit of an understatement, because they sort of abandoned Rick at about 10 years of age. He'd come down and play footy and throw him $10 and say, look after yourself. I'll see you in a couple of days. And that went pretty well until Whopper Williams, the local copper, got a hold of him with a packet of cigarettes stuffed under his jumper. So we had to tighten up after that. There's some in-joke stuff here, but stick with me. No, my old man was my hero for as long as I can remember. I think a lot of people in the room would have a similar experience. He was a coach and I was his shadow. I'd sit up in match committee, I'd listen to every single thing he did. And his health's been a bit up and down, so for him to be here tonight means the world. And he's my greatest supporter, bar none. He had blinkers on, goggles on, I could do no wrong. And I never really, as I said, I hadn't held out any hope of being in the Hall of Fame, but I think my dad did. So whoever got inducted, he would tell Rick, that bloke wasn't as good a kick as Garry. And the next bloke would come and go, Gary's a better mark than him. And he worked through the list, and then Plugger got inducted, and I thought, you got your stuffed here, Panch. Quick as a flash, he said, you're fitter than him. I remember that. So I love him. He's a bit of a degenerate gambler, but I tell you what, to have his son inducted as a Hall of Fame member and be at the casino, it's about as good as it gets for him. So. Yeah. And if he dropped off the perch tonight, Panch, I think he'd be pretty happy to go this way. We've got a couple more photos to do before you do. My mum is the life, soul and beating heart of our family. She'll be dancing on the tables tonight when everyone else is going, and no one enjoys life like my mum, and she's been my greatest supporter as well, so I love having you here. My boys, my three boys, I call them my boys. They're men, they're young men. I call my boys in conversation all the time, and I'm just so proud of the three of you. Your mum, my ex-wife Melissa's done a great job in raising you boys. And all you want back is them to be proud of you, not just in footy but in life, and I think they are. One of the great thrills, and I live sort of vicariously through Nick a bit because he's got three young boys, and I watch him go about life, and I think back to when they were little. One of the greatest thrills I've ever had was sitting them down and telling them about tonight. Now, they are really hard markers, my boys. They've got vicious tongues. No one gets ahead of themselves in our life, in our world, in our family. They'll take you down as quick as anything, but to see the joy and pride in their eyes just broke me and meant the absolute world to me. So to have a moment like this, I wish every dad could have this dream about a night such as this. So to you three boys, I love you. They're passionate football men too. They love their demons. Their mum called me around to their house one day and said, "You've got to come and talk to your son, Benjamin." So I went round. It was a Sunday afternoon game. I walked in. There was a hamburger with a lot just dripping down the wall. I said, "What's wrong?" He said, "The demons have wasted their inside 50s again, Dad." And Tom and Josh are still playing footy, and I love them. Josh thinks he could still fix Melbourne's forward problems, and Tom, I think he could manage them. They've got beautiful girls, Molly and Lucy are with them, so it's great to see you. And Ben's available. He's 31, hadn't got a girlfriend, so... Table 28. It's in reasonable health. Thank you, boys. You're loyal and protective. You're as close as three brothers could be, and you're my three best friends in the world. And then Nikki, my partner, every day something happens that makes me realise how unbelievably fortunate I am to have you in my life, darling. I wouldn't be the easiest person in the world to live with. I think that's well known. But your kindness and compassion, understanding, has allowed me to be a much better version of myself than I've ever been in my life. Thank you for opening my eyes to what matters in the world that we live in, and the things that I used to say were life and death, important were merely experiences that we had to have. So they neither define you nor they condemn you, and they're part of the journey. So having things like tonight are really humbling and to be celebrated, but having things like tonight with you next to me mean the absolute world to me. So thanks, Dale. And that's it, really. So as time goes by, your life changes and your persona changes, and as I said, 26 years ago I was a player, and if you go back to where I started this chat, all I ever wanted to be was a footy player, and I guess right now I'm a media person, which is really cool. I still get to stay involved in the game. But the thing about tonight, as this night has worn on and in the lead up to it, I thought, shit, I feel like a footy player again, and that's the greatest thing about tonight. And I look around the room again, and Tim Watson's on our table, who probably the last place he wants to be tonight is here, but he was my childhood hero growing up. I had his poster on my wall, and he's become my work colleague, who I spend every day with, and a really trusted and close confidant. And I love that fact that you come out, Tim. And we've all got those experiences in the room. So I've been told by all my boys, Brownie and everyone else that come along here, that this is the best night in footy, and I understand exactly what you're talking about now. So thanks to Richard, thanks to everyone else that had a say in my being inducted into the Hall of Fame. It means the world to me, and it's one of the great nights. Thank you very much.